StreamYard Maker hotline. I feel as though I should play some sort of a trumpet fanfare of some sort because, we have the honor and distinction of the one and only Frank Wright returning from his having danced with, I don't know, he was courted by, he danced with, he hung out with, he was retweeted by Elon Musk. So I'm not worthy. I'm not worthy. No pressure or anything on you, Frank.
Well, no, look, it's a pleasure to be here, Mike. And as I said to you before we started the show, it was you who dared to have me on before anyone had ever heard of me. What a reckless maneuver! So you've only got yourself to blame, Mike. This is all your fault.
The interesting thing about you and I being the first one that had you on, I was also the first guy to interview James Fishback.
Were you?
No one wanted. No, I interviewed him in January before the morning that he filed his paperwork and announced. I interviewed him, and the rest, as they say, is kind of history. So I kind of have this tendency. I guess I'm a good talent scout. I'm a good judge of talent. True story about James, a true story about you. And for those of you that don't know, Maggie and I were talking about this the other day. The first time that we interviewed Frank was during the Corona Doom, during the Corona hoax, was in 2020. And you had written something on Substack, and I went, "What that guy wrote right there." And then I messaged you, and I said, "A great piece, Frank. Thank you so much." And you wrote a follow-up, and I invited you on the program, and the rest, as they say, is history. I don't know. Is it a good history? Is it a sordid history? What? But 6 years we have been speaking to one another. That's quite a record.
It is. God bless you, my brother, and thank you for that.
You're welcome. So everyone that is following you, and the people that have seen what you call the Makerfield moment, I assume that Makerfield is a town or borough.
Oh,
okay.
Well, I mean, there is a town called Ashton in Makerfield, but the thing is, the way that general elections work, and by-elections, which is this, when you elect a member of parliament, there's basically a line drawn around a bunch of voters, and that's called a constituency. And so the constituency is called Makerfield, but it's got like bits of other towns in it, like the bottom of Wigan and so on, which is near Manchester, which is in the north of England. So yes, that's why it's called Makerfield.
And this Andre the Giant, or the Jolly Green Giant dude that was interviewing you, I'm going like, either Frank is really small and he's a little person and I didn't know, and that he's of the Peter Dinklage variety, or that guy is really tall. But apparently Mr. Colville is very tall.
Yes, Will Coleshill from Vox Populi is unacceptably tall, to be honest. I called him to his face a bigot before he even interviewed me. I went up to him and made that point to his face, Biggert, and firmly informed him that height is not right. He was rather alarmed at this because I'd never met him before, and I just kind of passed him in the street. But then later on, he ambushed me. And yes, both of your statements are true. He is a giant, and I am a novelty-sized person. And as I informed my son, beware of giants because they eat little people.
And to follow up on that, the funny thing is, when you start off your Makerfield moment piece at frankwright.substack.com, I assume, is that your children that dressed you up as Frodo in the Shire? You muted.
Actually, no. What happened was that I did a series called Frankly for LifeSite. They rather irresponsibly allowed me to do my own show, which is obviously reckless decision. So I actually started off talking about our disintegrating liberal civilization and trying to explain to people that the reason why the world is mad is because it's effectively been taken over by a progressive, liberal, democratic, modernist revolution that was intentionally created over 100 years ago. And that's why we're in the mess we're in today. I went on about things like Pascendi of Pope St. Pius X that predicted the revolution of the church, and indeed the Catholic social teaching of Leo XIII in the 19th century that said to us that the liberal system was going to collapse into moral and social disorder. And here we are now. because it worshipped false idols like human equality and so on, and basically replaced the worship of God with that of a liberal idea of man. Now, in between that, all that serious stuff, talking about the disintegration and why you don't have to go mad with the mad system and so on, really positive message saying that there is a way out, and the political economy of the church shows us the way out, kind of restoration of sanity and reality, if you like. I decided to make these adverts for products that don't exist because I hate consumerism, right? And I think the liberal system is basically one big lying advert for a utopia that's never going to materialize and just produces hell anyway. So I decided to dress up as a hobbit because I do live in the Shire and I am the right size. Now, you wouldn't believe this, but there's a man who lives over the road from me. And as when he got wind of this, he said, oh, just wait a minute. 30 minutes later, I looked out of my window, and bear in mind where I live, about 7 people here. There's hardly anyone here. It's middle of the country. There's Gandalf. It turned out he had a full Gandalf costume, right? Like the wizard hat, the robe, the beard. You saw him in the video. That's my neighbor.
I did.
When I went up to him, like I see the sword. It's the genuine sword, right? He's got a replica, genuine Lord of the Rings sword, and it's like, what are the odds? So we went into his garden, and I made this video for this ridiculous product that doesn't exist, and all it does is just give you incredibly hairy feet. and we had a lot of fun with it. Yeah, I think it was Shire pilled and Hobbit maxing. So yes, I thought I'd kind of lean into my my stature, if you like, as a tiny little and rather amusing figure genuinely from the Shires of Old England. And it was lovely.
I did see Gandalf, and I actually did see that piece on LifeSite News. So the Vox Populi guy finds you, and he sticks the microphone in your face. And what are you doing? Why have you gone to this rally or whatever it was? And then you get into this 15-minute long. Basically, this is a repetition of things that you have previously said. I want the audience to know there's nothing in that interview that Frank has not previously said, probably dozens of times. As a matter of fact, you didn't even get into some of the good stuff, which I hope to share with the audience today, the Weimar Republic stuff, and why we're in the Weimar moment, and people don't realize it. The other part about what is the AI doing to us. And I thought that I would start with, because it's one of your bullet points in the Makerfield moment, about how regime change ruined the West. I keep asking the question, why does every time Marco Rubio go on television, why does he have to say, and the Cuban regime? Why did everyone seemingly is a regime except Trump and Starmer and the UK. So everyone else on earth is a regime. And regime is actually not a bad word. It just comes from reg. It just comes from the Latin word rex for king, basically. So all these places are all kingships now and regime. But it is regime change. Regime change, Frank, has produced nothing but instability, misery, murder, death, mayhem, and refugees. That's all it's produced. Hasn't produced peace, hasn't produced prosperity, hasn't produced anything that the people that promote it have advertised for it.
The regime change regime has changed most of all is ours. If you remember what the world was like, as I do, say in the 1990s and so on, you can see for yourself. Unfortunately, many people don't remember that because they weren't born then, or they've been systematically brainwashed by the regime change regime, which in fact sponsors social revolution and propaganda at home as much as it smashes nations abroad, which magnifies and establishes the roots of mass migration. And then a whole host of other policies come in to tell you that this is brilliant and that you should support it. So it's changed the political economy of our way of life. What does that mean? Regime change has had such a massive effect that it's effectively become a way of monetizing the effects of mass destruction. That's not just the destruction of countries you might not care about abroad, but it's a destruction of your country. What does that mean? It means the destruction of the honesty and meaning of your media, of the meaning of your life, of the things that your politicians tell you, because most of them are sponsored by the industry that does that. And that's paid for by enormous national debts. This has impoverished the West, the United States, Britain, the West generally. We've borrowed enormous amounts of money to pursue this project of global domination through social revolution and war that's left us morally and financially bankrupt. Now, if you think that's a radical view, there's a very interesting speech that J.D. Vance gave in, I think, July 2024 to the Quincy Institute of Responsible Statecraft. And he said, towards a foreign policy for the American middle class, realism and restraint. And he said that decades of regime change wars had bankrupted America, and it was making basically working life in America impossible. It was hollowing out the economy, and for no benefit at all. It was extremely costly in terms of blood and treasure. And one extremely significant thing that he said was that if we are the moral Christian Republican Party, why do we keep starting wars that keep on genociding historic Christians? He said the word genocide or genociding at least 5 times, and he pointed out a fact that most people simply aren't aware of, that the Iraq War alone led to the deaths of over 1 million historic Christians. So he said, look, we've bankrupted ourselves to kill Christians whose lineage goes back to the time of Christ himself, blessed be his holy name. And so, you can see that this narrative has vanished from the American political spectrum now, because you've been dragged into another forever war on the same template. And you can see why. You got this sense, oh, we've seen this movie before. The case for war is manufactured. The population and the so-called regime are demonized. A whole load of lies, and they are lies, about weapons of mass destruction are invented. You've seen this in Syria. You saw this in Iraq. And you see it now you saw it in Libya too. And now you see it in Iran. Now, obviously, the elephant in the room here is that there is a rogue state in the Middle East that has developed weapons of mass destruction that President John F. Kennedy said they should not do. Look what happened to him. And now you can also see that those weapons of mass destruction, Israel's nuclear program, was developed with nuclear secrets and material that was stolen from the United States as well. And they've never declared it. And they never openly admit how many they have. And yet their politicians repeatedly threaten to use them. So I don't accept the argument of weapons of mass destruction, because it was basically made up. These were lies in Iraq, in Libya, in Syria, and in Iran. They're just not there. That's just a way of selling the war to people. If you were really concerned about destabilizing weapons of mass destruction in the Middle East, you would seek to denuclearize the rogue state of Israel.
And this is something, well, first of all, they've never admitted that they have weapons.
Yeah.
There's no admission. They won't let the AIEA inspectors in. They're not allowed to come in. So if they do, assuming that they do have weapons, there is no public recording of them. And then secondly, as you were mentioning this, it almost seems like the United States and the Western powers are in a competition to see if we can out-genocide the end of the Ottoman Empire, which set its sights on eradicating all the Armenian Christians, and did a pretty good job of it. 2 million, the estimates vary, 2 million, 2.5 million. An interesting little sidebar here. Why is a certain senator in California in the United States? Because his grandparents, Adam Schiff's grandparents, fled the Armenian genocide. And how does Schiff keep getting elected? Because the Armenians in L.A. love him. He's like a legacy. Just thought I'd throw that in. Frank Wright here, frankwriter.com, frankwright.substack.com, Frank Writer, WRIGHTER.com, here on the StreamYard Maker Hotline, here with us on the Mike Church Show here. Another question that you asked in that interview and that you told Vox Populi, and I'm listening to the answer going, yeah, tell them, was a question about, well, what do we have what is a market for? We don't have a market economy so I can be the product. So that me, everything that I know, all of my knowledge, all of my data, and basically I am a revenue generator for the state or for the oligarchy. And this is pretty much what you said, but you actually asked the question in the Makerfield moment piece, and then you answered it. So what do we have a market for, Frank? Is it for human flourishing, or is it for the oligarchs to get richer and us to get poorer?
Well, the question that I framed was that, and that I failed to say in the video, was to ask, what is the economy for? Are we for it, or is it for us? And the crisis that we're in now, and it will get worse, gives us the opportunity to ask that question and give a better answer. Because, of course, the economy we have now basically consumes us. And we're seen as replaceable economic units in it, which is why our people are being replaced in practically every nation in the West. Because from the point of view of this political economy, it doesn't matter who's doing the consuming, you just need more consumers. And so you've got this extremely cynical weapon of mass destruction called the liberal system, which is basically wiping us out and destroying the values of our Christian civilization. Now, if you think that these regime change wars, they're none of your business, they don't affect you, well, that's correct in the sense that you aren't obliged to take a side, but it's incorrect in the sense that you think it's not having a direct effect on your quality of life. It's driving your nations into debt. It's sponsoring and capturing practically your entire political class. And this is the reason why we always see these absolutely insane but heavily propagandized reasons to drive us into further bankruptcy, debt, and destruction worldwide, which is ruining our lives and indeed helping to supply the endless waves of mass migration that are effectively replacing us in our own homes. So if that's the economy, if we're told that everything we do must be good for the economy, we need, like, for example, 20 million minimum migrants into Britain over the last 2 decades, at least. I think since 1997, it's been over 20 million people that have come here. And we're told that this is because of the economy. And well, if that's for the sake of the economy, then the economy isn't for the sake of us and our people, is it? It's not for the sake of our civilization. And so basically, it's a disposable economy. Everything you get is disposable trash. It gives you disposable trash to buy, to eat. The food for thought, the opinions that you're given are all disposable trash as well. And ultimately, it sees you as disposable trash. So it's nihilist. It doesn't recognize the essential value of human life. It has nothing to say about human dignity. It's a pack of lies that's ruining everything. And it's deeply degrading our lives. And the mad wars and the mad policies are all of a piece in this system, which once again, I would say, if you understand the project of the liberal system of the last century, you can recognize it as a weapon of mass destruction itself.
And the weapon of mass destruction that it is. And most people don't think about it like that. They think about it in terms of, no, it's a free market. No, it's this and that. No, it's capitalism. We use the term capitalism in a manner in which we've almost neutered it. Capitalism is a term that the commies use to describe us. It's not a term that free marketeers in the United States use to describe us, or in Great Britain use to describe. You would have called it a mercantilist economy, right? Before the bad guys came in, you had a system of merchants.
Before we get too far into that, I'm definitely not a communist. I'm certainly not a socialist. I've got nothing against like people making money and things like that. No, of course. Prosperity is basically absent from our lives. One of the problems of this disastrous economy is that it's impoverished people. Most of the ordinary people I know are desperate to stay afloat. If they work, then they usually have 2 or 3 jobs in a household, not to get on, but to just make the rent and keep up the payments on the things that they've had to borrow to live their lives, to go to work in the first place. No one's getting anywhere. Real wages have been stagnant for decades. There's no hope, there's no dignity, there's no aspiration, and quite a lot, there's no real jobs either. It's a kind of dignity-free environment in which you're choked to death by a rainbow lanyard, by some hectoring apparatchik more than anything. And this isn't good enough. It's wasting human capital. It's destroying the dignity of labor. And all you hear in these mad liberals is talk after talk of my rights, these rights, minority rights given to insane and destructive, morally unrestrained, socially dissolving movements of mutual antagonism. This rights-based system has mobilized people into antagonistic factions of permanent grievance, where they basically declare war on everyone but themselves. It destroys society, which is very good if what you want to do is collapse all the nations into a global system, which the liberal system always has been. It's always been an international economic model. And so the problem that I have with this is what I would call market worship, where if the only thing you're interested in is money and profit, then of course that profit is going to come at the loss of everything else in life. Not just your standard of living, not just your ability to earn one, not just your ability to have any dignity while you're doing that, but the very meanings that you're supplied, the beliefs that that system supplies to you are effectively false idols that also morally and spiritually degrade you. So eventually your life becomes completely meaningless, except as a kind of component to be consumed in a vast machine where the only real value in life is price. It's not good enough, and it's degrading all of us. Whether you agree with me or not, whether you like my principles or not, I think we can all agree that this cannot go on, because there's literally nothing in it for us, and it's reducing us all and everything we love in life to nothing.
Well, I'm not going to go out on a limb and say that we should all bow down to a statue of Ned Ludd, but Ned Ludd did have a point.
I went to Ludd's church as a boy. There's a cavern in Derbyshire where he used to give his lectures, right? His speeches to mobilize people. And people think he was just some kind of lunatic who went around smashing all technologies to kind of madman. No, he specifically wanted to destroy one type of machine. And that machine was invented, when that machine was invented, it would completely eradicate the generations of craftsmanship, the families, the communities that depended upon that particular type of craft. And it replaced them, and it made them all redundant, and it made villages redundant, and people's generational skills and value and labor and dignity redundant. And in that very restricted way, which is what he wasn't opposed to all technology. He was right. Ned Ludd was right, and it's a great injustice to look at him as just some kind of nutter who wanted to smash everything, which is why the term Luddite is used today. It's important to understand that, because Ned Ludd had a good point.
Yep.
He opposed the abuse of technology where it needlessly destroys the dignity of working life and the lives of working men. And this system doesn't care about the lives of working men and women. And I'm from the working class myself, and I've seen how me and my people have been demonized and neglected and basically left to die deaths of despair for decades by successive governments. So when you hear people say you're a Luddite if you oppose, for example, the unrestricted introduction of an algorithm of government through what they call artificial intelligence, that's just a way of insulting you to say, oh, look, you don't like technology, you don't like progress. Well, not everything new is necessarily good. And we should not allow this idea of progress to dictate to us, because if you look at the 20th century, every time some technology is invented that some form of elite wants to use, they immediately tell everyone who has questions about whether it should be used, well, if you even question it, they call you a Luddite, an idiot, and they just ridicule you and hand wave you away. But if you notice the horrors of the 20th century, pardon me, many of the horrors of the 20th century have been due to the unrestrained application of new technologies, especially those technologies to end life at its beginning and to terminate it at its end as well. And from that, you get these terrible liberals like Peter Singer telling you, oh, look, it's okay to kill the unborn. It's really good, actually, for women to murder their own children, because they're not persons. People like him, preference utilitarians, will tell you they'll come up with an entire new nonsense moral system that just makes it all okay. Now, what that's fundamentally doing is saying, oh, look, we have the power to do this now because of technology. So let's make up a bunch of words that tell everyone it's okay to do it, when it certainly isn't. It certainly isn't a good idea to completely automate our public administration, our government, our lives, and be under the constant surveillance of machines, which incidentally have all been programmed by mad liberals on mad liberal ideas. So you're going to be policed forever by a kind of immortal microchip version of some blue-haired rainbow lanyard apparatchik, and you're suddenly going to find that you can't get hold of your poverty wages to go and buy your flipping toxic slop in the supermarket anymore, because you refuse to respect some lunatic's pronouns. So yes, there are serious concerns about that. We don't want to hand more power to the people who are trying to smash our civilization and demanding that we pay the highest taxes on record to destroy our entire way of life and, in fact, eradicate our people. And in fact, if you look at it from the point of view, even the pagans can see this system is evil. It actually hates anything and anyone good. So do you want that to become, if you like, permanent by transforming what you can call the social algorithm of the 20th century into a digital algorithm that never sleeps and that never forgets and will never forgive you? No, not at all. So the reason why the word Luddite is used is to basically delegitimize sane, rational, and decent objections to the unrestrained march of technology into the degradation of human life. So there it is.
Well, I would just like to pronounce myself as the founding member of the Madisonville, Louisiana Ned Ludd Adoration Society, and we are all very, very happy about that. An interesting fact that I just learned this the other day. They say, oh no, AI, the AI will be absorbed. The loss of 80% of your jobs will be absorbed. It would just be in a blink of the eye. You won't even know that it happened. No, I will know that it happened because it's not going to happen. Sam Altman is telling you this. The CEOs of these companies, their own projections are not 80% improvement or improvement in productivity or anything. One of them is 3.5%. The high water mark is 6%. So they're lying to you about what it's going to do. And then they tell you in the next breath, Frank, then they say, but it's okay because the AI is going to figure out how to re-employ the 70% of people. I'm like, no, you know why it's not going to? Because it's not going to get the chance. A quick fact. In 1840, the population of equines in the United States, horses for the uninitiated, population of equines in the United States was 4 million. Here's a technological revolution for you. By 1900, the population of equines in the United States was 21 million. Conversely, by 2000, the population of equines in the United States had returned to, drumroll please, about 4 million. Most of them show horses or thoroughbred horses. And the reason that I bring it up is that there was a technological revolution, a revolution in technology, but you don't call it one. Why the need for more horses? Well, there were more people working in the U.S. They were going greater distances. They were building little towns, needed a place to get from point A to point B, and the horse was the way that you did it. You can't say that the West was settled by machines. The West was settled by men on horses primarily. And the point is that they're telling you that the next evolution has to come from this. It has to. It's inevitable. It's not inevitable.
No, it isn't, and it's only the magnitude of the crisis that we're in, the moral, spiritual, political, economic, diplomatic world crisis that we're in, gives you the permission to change the evil system. That's why you shouldn't despair. This is the great historic opportunity to clear out that terrible evil regime that has ruled us all into a permanent state of emergency. It's got to go. It's us or it, and it's not going to be us. Now, I think the wider point here is that if you look again at the 20th century, if you like, the dismantling of our civilization has taken place precisely at the rate of the development of technology and communications. So the speed of technology has been the speed of the demolition of our Christian civilization, from the paper and cinema age through the radio, television, and the internet, and then the phone age. So what can you say about this? We've been led to believe that every time we invent a new technology, we have to follow what it permissions.
Right.
The technology sets the values of our society, that there's some inevitability about this. If you look at that, that is basically saying that there's a telos. A telos is a Greek word meaning that there's a disembodied supernatural force pushing through history and so on. This is Hegelian nonsense. No such force exists. We have the power to say, we have these new technologies, try and use them for the common good and human flourishing, rather than simply blindly obey everything that they now make possible, which has consistently produced negative effects that could be mitigated, or in some cases even avoided completely, if we had wisely said, let us consider the possibilities offered by these technologies wisely. Let's not reject them out of hand. No one's saying that. I'm not a primitivist. I don't think we should go back to living in caves and so on.
Sure.
But what I'm saying is that we need to change this ridiculous belief, and it is a pseudo-religious belief, that every time something is invented, we must wholeheartedly adopt it without restraint and just let it run riot. This isn't wise. It is prudent to look at its potential and to apply it where we can to maximize human flourishing and to maximize prosperity, which is stability and so on. But where we see deleterious effects, it should and could be restrained if we wanted to do it. And that's a matter of political will. One of the reasons people are so despairing nowadays is because for decades, we've never seen politicians do any strategic planning in the West or use the political will for the national interest and the common good. Now, that doesn't mean to say it can't be done. It can be done.
Sure.
You can't do it with this captive, corrupt political class who've been sponsored by that political economy of mass destruction and nihilism. But we can do it now. We have the opportunity to ask, what are these things for? What's the maximum good for the greatest number of people we can get for them? And what are the moral principles we're going to follow instead of the worship of markets and the basic subjection of mankind to technology, which is madness because it's completely amoral and it has no interest in the value of your life. We can do better than this. And I think that we can find many, if not all of those answers in the remarkable political economy of the social teachings of Leo XIII, which is the Catholic social teachings. I mean, it is a blueprint for the detransitioning from our insane political system of mass destruction to one that respects human dignity, that insists on the rights and duties of all people, ruler, ruled, capital, and labor, to provide balance. That's what we need, balance. We don't need one mad faction oppressing another. We don't want to be subject to technology or to money or to some kind of insane communist revolution, but balance. Balance between the members of our nation, balance between the power of money and the power of labor, so we can try and harmonize everything in what you might call the common good. And that's why it's called the politics of the common good.
Well, and Frank had mentioned His Holiness Leo XIV. He's speaking, of course, about Rerum Novarum, which Pope Leo XIV's first encyclical, he did make an homage to Rerum Novarum. Said we had just celebrated the 150th anniversary recently here. And then that encyclical pretty much goes off the rails. You read it for yourself. There's a lot of people talking about it. And speaking about
out with the old and in with the gay.
Frank Wright of frankwright.substack.com. Also, Frank was discovered after I discovered him and made him famous by my friend John Henry Weston and was employed by LifeSite News. We're just going to throw everyone into the mixing pot right now. So if you want to come after us here, I'll give you the list of who you need to come after. I want to go back to what you were. I want to go back to what you were to what we were just saying about the political economy and about the human flourishing aspect of it. I was just reading. I'll show the audience. I was just reading. This is Schumacher. I'm sure it's a book that you have on.
Oh yes. Oh yes.
Economics as if people mattered. This is Schumacher after he converted to the Catholic faith. He cites, and you can tell that he's read a lot of Etienne Gilson. And he was quoting Etienne Gilson. This is something that is not in Frank's work per se, but it is in some of his other works on the Weimarization of the West. And that is, you can't get to where Frank wants us to go, and I agree with him, and where I want us to go, and many others, without a restoration, and I was just talking about this last hour, of metaphysics.
Oh no, I do. I did an entire series.
Did you do it? Okay, you have to restore metaphysics, and I'm sorry, there are no pagan metaphysics.
No, but I did do a piece on that about the role of belief. I'm writing a book on political economy, and in the chapter on the role of belief in political economy, one of the remarkable things is that you don't realize that the power of making you believe things is the power by which you've been ruled. It is the central political technique of the liberal century. They make you believe in it by mobilizing every form of cultural production to manufacture belief in the system and to make you disbelieve that there's any other possible way of living. And that's what it does. Your shoes, the things that you buy, the things you consume online, everywhere. You're saturated by this. This ideology is everywhere, and that's why it's invisible. And I did talk about the fact that the reason why everything is mad and the reason why anyone who's sane, and if you ever point out the terrible effects of these insane policies, they call you an extremist. That's because this system is basically anti-reality. Like you said, it does not have a metaphysics. And where's the best explanation of the nature of being in reality, which is metaphysics? Well, that's found in the Catholic teachings, isn't it?
Yes.
The traditional Catholic Church, not the gay modernism, which is completely basically a liberal modernist worship of mankind instead, and also has no metaphysics. But if you look into the Catholic social teaching of Leo XIII and into Pascendi Dominici Egregius by Pope St. Pius X, you will get the most profound and thorough education in what metaphysics is and why it matters to have a sane and accurate description of the changeless nature of being and reality. Because if you proceed from the truth, and that is the truth, then what you predict is going to be accurate as well. And you will find, if you read those books, which were written in the late 19th century and in 1907, you'll see that they had enormous, startling, accurate predictive power. They predicted exactly why and how our system would go mad, suffer a total moral collapse, and descend into the kind of disorder that we see as the new normal today. Why could they do that? Because they proceeded from the truth.
Yep.
And if you proceed from the truth, then what you say about the future is going to have a high degree of predictive power. It's going to be accurate. And that's why they are. That's it. It's that isn't actually a supernatural function. That's because, as you said, you have a sound metaphysics as your foundation. And so what we're talking about now is getting back to a politics that recognizes the basis of reality. We're talking about a politics of reality and sanity that delivers genuine opportunity for the human flourishing of everyone, from whether rich or poor, man or woman. So you can maximize your opportunity in life and do what you're best fit to do to the maximum of your capability, instead of being discriminated against by a bunch of ideological lunatics who will actually punish you for being a good person and good at your job. We can't carry on like that.
So for those that don't know, if you have no metaphysics in your politics and in your life, every time someone brings up metaphysics and you say, what are metaphysics? In the back of your mind, you should hear, gay.
Oh, look, by the way, when you said about small is beautiful, right?
Yes.
I have, in my personal life, spoken to people who are, if you like, recovering conservatives. And some of them are very serious economists, very serious top-level economists, people in the City of London and so on. And I had a conversation with one of them quite recently, talking to him about the political economy of the Catholic Church. And he said, oh, well, that's all small scale, isn't it? That would never work. You can't translate that onto a national scale.
Oh,
and then
please.
I said to him, look, what was the most successful industrial economy in post-war Europe? That was the economy of the German-speaking world. Now, 80% or maybe even 90%, I forget exactly which, of the German economy that's in Germany, Austria, and German-speaking Switzerland is called the Mittelstand. That means the bit in the middle. Now, the Mittelstand is, as I said, at least 4/5 of the most successful economy in Europe after the Second World War. And that is largely owned by single families. Single middle-class families own the majority of German industry, and most of those families are Catholic. And that is the political economy of the Catholic Church. It isn't just small scale. It produced the leading industrial and economic power in Europe after the war. And the only reason that it isn't flourishing now is because the mad communist Greens have decided to dismantle it out of an act of sheer insanity. Because again, these people hate anything good. But it does work at scale. And that's family-owned businesses on small scale multiplying to become a major economic power, which provides genuine jobs for people in which they learn genuine trades. And when you learn a trade, you learn something that can never be taken away from you. And that is the dignity of labor. And we need to return dignity to our lives. And that's how we can restructure our economy to make sure that it delivers for people, to give their lives meaning, give them something to be proud of. So they learn how to make and do things instead of being deprived of knowledge by a so-called knowledge economy that's impoverished us all and delivered us into debt slavery.
So one of the last great things that the Catholic German people did, and you can go there today, and it's one of the biggest tourist attractions in all of Germany, is the Salzburg Cathedral. It took 150 years to build it. Men started working on it that died and didn't finish their work, passed the work on to their sons. You go stand outside the Salzburg Cathedral, 490 feet tall with the two spires, and you look at it like, how did they, modern architects look at it and go like, how did they do that? Well, they were answering to a higher authority. Maybe it revealed to them how to build the architecture. So you can't say that a return to the guild state, for example, Sterling's book, The Guild State, a return to the teachings of the great Jesuits, Father Call, the framework of a Christian society, these great works at the beginning of the 20th century that Frank mentioned from the great Jesuit scholars, the encyclicals that we mentioned, Quadragesimo Anno and Rerum Novarum. All this stuff is contained, but it looks back and it even says in the beginning of Rerum Novarum, we are not looking to return to the 14th century. Man is always looking future. Espere, hope, requires you to look into the future. You're always looking into the future. No one is saying that, well, you guys don't want us to have phones and electricity. I'm perfectly fine living in a guild state with phones and electricity, indoor plumbing, and even DoorDash delivery services, okay? Fine with it. That's not the point. All right, Frank, I don't want to keep you all day because I know you're busy. I want to talk to you about my favorite subject and one of yours because we're not going to get into the whole thing. And that's the last one of the last segments and the piece about Makerfield, the rule by media. This is something that I am intimately familiar with. Been doing this for 35 years. I know a little bit about it. I certainly know a little bit about how they play the game today. Matter of fact, I did a monologue. I did an hour on it yesterday to just kind of lay out that old school radio and TV entertaining broadcasters like moi, we are not wanted on the social media, digital media delivery platforms. They've lined up the legal and the you could say the regulatory. It is the royalty state, if you will. They've lined it up against us. They don't want us to be entertaining people. They don't want to hear any music unless you paid for it. They don't want you to do any segments that are actual segments. They want you to just do what the algorithm tells you to do. And if you don't do that, you cannot advance in their little world. So the people that do advance in their little world are by definition, at least at some level, they've been co-opted. They've agreed that, I'm not going to do it the way that I think I should do it and the way that I did it for years or the way that makes people much happier and gets them off the outrage porn. I'll do it the way they want me to do it, and then I get the reward of the clicks and the likes and the millions and what have you here. This is rule by dictate, if you will. This is not an organic system where the most talented and the most brilliant and the wisest or the most funny or the most humorous advance. They don't. We've eliminated that. Only those that bend the knee. And if you're listening to them and running your life by what they say, well, then they're basically telling you what the digital new world order. You will own nothing. You will be happy. The new world order oligarchy wants you to know, and in the manner in which they wish for you to know it. Now, that's not exactly what you wrote about, but that's just my media take on it.
Well, look, the thing is, what you're pointing out here is it's a machine, okay? It's a machine. And as I said to you, the role of media in the manufacture of mass belief is the central political technique of the 20th century. Sorry, it's central to the political technique of the 20th century. What that means is that is the foundation of how we are all ruled. And if you look at the machine generally, like the economy is a machine, right? It doesn't recognize human values. It just devours you. It consumes consumers. That's what consumerism does. If you look at our politics, we have machine politics, of which Tony Blair was really the chief architect in the West. That means that political parties don't actually have any convictions or fundamental values at all. They're simply machines for the purpose of gaining and retaining power. And then you can see also the way that the media operates is itself a machine. And like you said, if you are not a willing component and do not fit into the parameters of that increasingly digitized algorithm, then you're not going to be part of it. You're going to be discarded. It doesn't have any respect for truth. It doesn't have respect for talent, integrity, principle, or even genuine information. And in fact, what you get is that it just descends into slop churn. It just churns the same old slop out time and again. Now, I went on to a podcast the other day in London with a man called Peter McCormack, and he pointed to the chair that I was in, which was unacceptably high, and they didn't even give me a booster cushion. They also height shamed me as well. Shame on you. Height is not right. Disgusting. My little legs were dangling in the air, and they thought it was very funny. Anyway, he said that, look, he's invited a host of politicians on, that like the Conservative, the so-called the disgraceful leader of the disgraced Conservative Party and so on. None of these machine politicians will turn up. And I said to him, the reason for this is because they're desperate to control their image, because that's all they have. They have no substance. They have no conviction. They don't believe in anything. They're just there to gain and retain power. It's a business, and it's run like a machine because it's machine politics. It is a machine. And so if you speak to people honestly, if you have any genuine human input, it just excludes you. And they're terrified of that. So this is the reason why your entire life has now become rather like being lectured by an automated telephone tree response voice. That's why everyone talks like a Dalek at work. That's why the Prime Minister of Britain talks like a broken down robot, because the machine system produces machine-like people, and it only promotes and permissions them. If you are a genuine person with real human concerns, it views you as a kind of virus to be isolated and neutralized. It actually does destroy any genuine human input or indeed outrage or disquiet at the general direction of our way of life, which is into mass destruction. It's destroying everything.
Yep.
It's destroying our beliefs. It's destroying our historical memory. It's destroying the fabric of knowledge. It redefines reality in bizarre and distorting ways, so people simply can't even agree on what the nature of reality is nowadays. It constantly bombards you with an endless, unedited tide of slop that just melts out your mind. And remember that being extremely online is very bad for you, and going mad because of that, having a meltdown, is not just for political enemies. And I would remind you that, pardon me, that you've got the Black Mirror, as it were. And the Black Mirror was basically the instrument of the Aztecs. They used to stare into an obsidian mirror, and they said it would give them the sight beyond men. But the demon that gave you this sight would also lie to you at times, and it wouldn't tell you when it was doing it. You should bear that in mind, that you're not necessarily getting better informed by trying to keep up. You're reading an unedited tide of brain melting notifications without any form, often, of any verification. You can't keep up. You can't know what's going on. And quite a lot of that is manufactured to not just baffle you, but also to shape your idea of reality in your head. And that goes back to a political technique developed by Walter Lippmann in a book in the 1920s, where he said we can create a pseudo environment in the minds of the public, which effectively allows us to create public opinion. And once you can create public opinion in that way, you can make people vote for your pantomime politics, your pantomime parties, and you can make them believe that every single wicked thing that you're doing is in fact a moral good, which is where you get things like the current thing and people applauding the latest madness that's been handed down through this system by the political elites. Well, I think they're finished. Their time is up, because the awful reality all these lies and destruction have created, that's the world that people like me and you, ordinary people that have been excluded from the media, from political power for decades, we have to live in this mess, and we're not going to put up with it anymore. We must do better. We can, and we will, and we are going to win.
In other words, they are gay. It's the Mike Church Show here on the Ethics and Broadcasting Network, emphasis on that ethics part. My final question for Frank Wright here, and you will be able to catch this interview on X and on YouTube and on my website at mikechurch.com. Final question is, and I think this is the part of your interview with Vox Populi, Frank, that was not gay, that touched the chord of so many 40 million people and made Elon retweet it, was when you talked about the post-war liberal system. Because you spent about half of your time talking about the post-war liberal system. And let me tell you, folks, for those of you that don't know me, I've been at this for 35 years. I've interviewed a lot of people. I've spoken with a lot of people, spoken at a lot of events. No one has the take, the view of the post-war liberal system and has developed it to the point that Frank Wright has. And I think that people have this warped view that everything that came out of these was salvation of democracy that occurred with the defeat of the Nazis and the Japanese, and that all the, finally man was free to be all that man could be. And we would have this liberal system. That liberal system, by the way, is very gay. So It's not a liberal system. There's nothing liberal to it. As a matter of fact, it's very regressive. More people, an oligarchy at the top, more people at the bottom, and the orders that come as the population increases. You basically have a distribution of power. A member of Congress today, Frank, represents 785,000 American citizens. When the Constitution was written and ratified in 1789, first went into effect, 35,000 was the number. Then they got it to 45,000 and they thought, okay, it can't go any higher than that. Congress locked it in with an act in 1920 at 435 members. They knew what they were doing. This is in the same era that the post-World War I era. Of course, they were thinking about this during World War I. This was in the era that you get the Federal Reserve, you get the income tax. They abolished the election of senators or selection of U.S. senators by states and return it to the idiots that we call fellow citizens. All women get the right to vote. You get universal suffrage. All of this serves to weaken what was a liberal system. It's not a liberal system anymore, not in the classical sense of the word liberal. It's now a very.
Well, I'm not a liberal.
I know you're not.
Not in any sense. Not a liberal. Don't believe in it. Don't believe in John Rawls. Don't believe in Stuart Mill. Don't believe in Benthamite. None of that. No, I'm not a liberal.
Locke.
But
start with Locke.
But when I talk about the liberal system is a revolutionary system.
Sure.
Basically, it's a refinement of the technique that you've seen in the French Revolution and so on. That's what it is. It's a permanent revolution and it's destroying our civilization, and that's what it is. When I talk about the post-war liberal system, there's two things to mention. There's the Great War, the First World War, and then the Second World War. Pardon me. The liberal system was basically invented as an international economic model, and then bicameral parliaments were installed in dozens of countries across Europe and as far away as Argentina and Japan immediately after the Great War. Now, the First World War was described by Wyndham Lewis and Jean Renoir as a kind of industrial revolution that smashed our former civilizational order and replaced, the Christian civilization that we had established in Europe by the Catholic Church between the 9th and 11th centuries with this new mad system where you could only vote for liberals, left liberals, right liberals, extreme liberals, or indeed actual Bolsheviks. Now, the liberal system is the god that failed twice. Shortly after it was invented in the 1920s and 30s, it collapsed everywhere. It just fell apart. So then that was because it couldn't respond to the economic crisis caused by its supervening financial debt-based power, which came from the Federal Reserve. And it couldn't respond to the crisis of Bolshevism either. And so it collapsed. And so now it's collapsing again. Pardon me, again, due to another self-inflicted global economic crisis, and due to the terrible backwash effect of the sponsorship of our governments by the permanent or forever war political economy. So liberalism cannot stop that. It has actually permissioned all this. It cannot stop the mass destruction of our entire way of life and our Christian civilization and indeed our people. Now you can see, if one of the greatest ideas I've ever came across is the word technique. It comes, in my reading, from the Technological Society, or the book called La Technique by a Frenchman called Jacques Ellul.
Yep.
And it shows you how technique is basically the refinement of the production of a standard result. If you go back to the beginnings of the liberal idea, as it were, as a political and economic system in the early 20th century, the general idea was a bunch of internationalists and technocrats and propagandists who wanted to make a standard global system. This has got nothing to do with democracy or liberalism or progressivism or anything. All those values and movements and civil rights and so on that they sell you, what they actually do is they dissolve nations and make them easier to fold into an international global standard system with a global religion, which is the liberal state religion and the worship of liberal man elevated to replace Christ, which is completely mad. And then they give you all these values about utopia and equality and so on, again, which is completely mad and replaces order with chaos. And if you like, our moral foundations with complete degeneracy without restraint. And I would like to add that the consumer system actually profits from the deliberate dismantling of any moral or rational restraint in mankind whatsoever. It wants you to indulge all of your passions, all of your desires, and in fact manufactures and promotes them in what I would call a range of addiction economies, which morally and physically degrade you if you're subjected to them. So there's simply no meaning to your life other than to be consumed by largely manufactured desires for the purpose of an international standard economy. And that's all it is. And when you see that, it's horrifying. That's what it's actually doing at scale. And that was actually laid out and planned in the early 20th century. And it was put together. And then you had an international management structure in the Council on Foreign Relations to do that. And that's what we're seeing now. We're seeing the liberal system go into decline that it's caused itself inevitably as the great encyclicals of the church in Leo XIII and Pius X predicted in Pascendi and the Catholic social teaching.
Mm-hmm.
They predicted that this would happen because if you look at it, the foundations of it are mad, right? The worship of the false god of human equality is mad. These are lies. It doesn't have a metaphysics. It's completely detached from reality. And in fact, what it is it's demolishing the meaning of our lives, the basis of our civilization in Christ, blessed be his holy name, and all the sanity and justice and balance and order that radiated from that founded our civilization. And the liberal system is an attempt to replace our entire civilization with itself. And it's failed. It's finished. And what we must do now is do better than the common evil that it has instituted in every dimension of our lives. And we can, and we must, and we will.
So you're saying that we're going to win. You said it in your piece. You said we're going to win.
We are going to win. I'll tell you why. Because the liberal system can no longer supply meaning, prosperity, security. It can't answer the duties of the state. Again, this is a system that never talks about duties. It only ever talks about rights.
Right.
When rights are completely unrestrained, no one has any right to do anything. You have anarchy. Because there's no sense of reciprocal duty. There's simply no balance. There's no balance in our foreign policy. There's no balance in our economy. There's no balance between the different interests of people within and without our nations. And in fact, there's no real interest in the national interest at all. There's no real strategic planning at all because, in fact, they want to dismantle the nations and fold them into this horrific global standard system, which they're trying to sell us as some kind of utopia, which, in fact, is an international nowhere land full of light industrial sheds, browsed by mutual hostile strangers, all hunting for a bargain. And I'd like to remind you that if any idiot comes up and tells you about market values, ask them what the market value of a trafficked child is. Because when we've had the unrestrained market worship, when we've had the unrestricted right to buy, this has produced the right to buy a human life, established in 1993 in the United States, which has given the obscene international multi-billion-dollar industry of the hire of women to produce babies for sale. And that's what surrogacy is. And that is, if you like, the epitaph of this evil system. It literally reduces the production of human life to a consumer transaction. There is no limit to how far this system will fall morally. It will degrade us absolutely into disposable consumer products, and it already has. And we can't have this. That's why your life is so miserable, because this system cannot supply meaning. And it's not online radicals like you and me, Mike. It's not religious extremists like you and I, or political extremists, as they will call us. We're basically asking for a demand of sanity, dignity, order, and a rational system that works for us instead of destroying everything that we love forever, right? That's the demand. And reality is making that argument. It's not misinformation. It's not extremism, and it isn't extremists like myself and you. It's the reality we inhabit. And that reality has been created by the decisions made by the political elite all of our entire lives. And we can make better decisions when we clear them all out. And we are going to clear them all out.
And clearing them all out would be different in Great Britain than it would be in the United States, although the purpose would pretty much be the same for the restoration of the pre-liberal state.
It's a counter-revolution. We have been subject to a revolution that's destroying everything. It's got to stop. It's a counter-revolution, right? This is not a political party broadcast. We are all mobilized in that counter-revolution for the sake of our entire way of life, what we mean, what our lives mean, our culture, our history, and the future for our children. If we don't secure it, it's gone forever and we're finished. That's what's radicalizing people. It's an end to this revolutionary madness once and for all, and a decent way of life, a life worth living for every man, woman, and child. That's a reasonable demand. And it's absolutely disgraceful that when you come out and speak for that, people label you as an extremist and demonize you and subject you to terrible, dishonest, and vicious political attacks. It shows you how sick and mad the real extremists are, who are currently ruling us into a permanent state of emergency.
So, if you want to read something other than outside of Frank that has been written on this subject, I would just recommend Professor Plano Correa de Jalavera, the founder of the TFP. The book's called Revolution and Counter-Revolution. So, and if you haven't read Revolution and Counter-Revolution, pretty much if you read Professor Plano, you probably have read some of what Frank has said, because he's right about the counter-revolution. Think of it in terms of, what do you need to be done for you beyond what your city council could do? If all you had was all I have is my city council, my town council, the alderman or whatever, or maybe even it's just a council of judges that meets 8 people that meet once a year, whatever, and you go like, we have these problems and stuff, and we need you to fix them for us and stuff. Your list would be very short because you would not want to give your autonomy and your sovereignty away, and you'd say my family can pretty much work out most of the challenges of life. If there are things that families together that form this thing called a town that they see a problem, well, maybe you need to get together. It's almost unthinkable that you would go to the state or to the kingdom, if you will, and they didn't. In the medieval ages and the ages of faith, they didn't go to the state, almost never. It is even inconceivable. Yes, like in The Princess Bride. Inconceivable. It's almost inconceivable and not gay. Inconceivable that you would go to anything larger than the Kingdom of France, than the Papal States, than the the Papal States, or the Austro-Hungarian states. Almost unthinkable. The list of things that you would bring to them is so small, Frank. We've expanded the list, or they've expanded the list, and they've got us to go, okay, yeah, you can do that. No, withdraw your consent. No, not only do we not want you to do that, we're going to prevent you from doing that. That's what scares them. That's what makes you a radical.
You don't need an enormous, intrusive, insane ideological administrative bureaucracy that's going to police every aspect of your life inside your mind and out you, unless your policies are destructive and mad. If your politics actually do work for people and they like them and they make their lives better, then you don't need to police them all the time. You don't need to have all these intrusive policies. That means you can cut the state, you can cut the burden on the taxpayer, you can make sure that, in fact, the state performs its duties to the ruled, because the state has duties, and we've forgotten that, because instead we're ruled by an elite. Sir Isaiah Berlin, who was the greatest champion of the liberal idea in the 20th century, said there were basically 2 types of liberalism. One was value pluralism, which he said was supreme because it tolerated all different points of view. And he imagined that that's the one that he celebrated. But he said there was another type. And he said, and that's the rule by an elite. That's basically a despotism, which is a form of dictatorship by an unelected permanent government who just say, we're going to do this and tell you it's in your best interest. That's the system we have. Now, that's basically the government against its people. That's the ruler against the ruled. And that's why you see this increasing criminalization of speech, the over-bureaucratized surveillance state of your every aspect of life. There's practically nothing you can do without intrusion. Most of this isn't necessary. It is a form of authoritarian control. And the reason it's there is because their policies are mad and they're taxing you to demolish your entire way of life. And they know it. And so they're trying to punish you and supervise you and say, well, look, if you ever object to the awful things we're doing to you, we're going to criminalize the mention of these facts and punish you for it. So you'll lose your livelihood. And so people are made to live in fear. This is one reason people, have you noticed, no one ever talks about living in the free world anymore? Nope. Because it isn't. And that's the reason why we're ruled by what's effectively an insane crime syndicate. All their policies reduced to a weapon of mass destruction. And we have had enough. And we don't have to live like this. We can have a state that functions and discharges its duties. And its main duties are to provide prosperity, security, and some form of meaning to your life in the way it organizes the political economy, instead of making your life a dignity-free environment where you're basically policed by increasingly automated lunatics.
In other words, you want to live in a state that's not gay. I hate to keep using the word. All right, Frank, I'm going to let you go. But before you go, do you have any employment advice for the kids out there? Because, you know, our first couple of shows, there was some great employment advice that Frank used to give.
Well, yeah, I do. I mean, like, you know, I'm a very dutiful person, and I'd like to remind people that just because I've had this kind of media light shine on me, I despise celebrity in the political class generally, and I'm not in it for me, I'm in it for us. I will do my duty. This is an opportunity to serve the politics of the common good and to save the nation, and I take that extremely seriously. However, I will say that there are a few techniques to try and preserve your sanity in basically an asylum that's run by a bunch of loonies. And this is how to remain potentially employable, which I haven't, by the way, but by become routinely but cleverly insubordinate. So when someone gives you some mad order or some mad idea, you could just say to them, oh, noted. Interesting. What a good idea. Yeah, and then go away and never do what they say. Yeah, always be invincibly polite. In fact, you know, get them a birthday card, buy them the occasional little gift, and so on. But never carry out their orders. Just do that, and eventually they'll realise that you are basically order incapable. Right, so you can become politely ungovernable. Right, have excellent manners, be polite. And also try and remember that the people that you've come to see as your political enemies, like the kind of oppressive, insane class of apparatchiks whose livelihoods depend on this rotten system, try and remember that this entire system that is ruining our lives is controlled by the manufacture of belief. These people are casualties in a war on our civilization. See them as that. Try to become, if you can, a sort of social missionary, right? Help the wounded, heal the sick, have some compassion for these people who have been captured by an evil system that set out to do precisely what it has, to replace all the meaning of their lives with its own mad false idols that are totally self-destructive. That system is collapsing. They're not going to be able to believe in that anymore, and they're going to find themselves despairing and tremendously disillusioned. And when they get over their anger and they collapse into grief and despair, go and help them. And I know you might find that difficult to do, because they've persecuted you and they've said terrible things about you and they've profited off this evil system. But those are our people as well. And we must reach out to them and we must help them recover, because we all must recover from this disastrous experiment that has set out to morally degrade us, to baffle us, to set us against one another and create, if you like, an atmosphere of universal vengeance and confusion in which no one's life means anything. And there's really no point to life at all. And if we're going to do better than that, we should undertake a social mission to try and help people recover from the capture of their minds by this evil system. So do remember that too. But remember that though their world is mad and we have to live in it, we don't have to go along with it. We don't have to go mad with that. And it is disintegrating now, but you don't have to disintegrate with it. Remember, what a great idea.
Okay.
Noted.
And I would also add, and I took notes as you saw, I would also add that in the beginning of the counter-revolution, as this thing gets kicked off, please come and visit me and Frank in prison. I'm going to bring us.
Send me cheese. Not a joke. That's not code for anything else, right? Please, cheddar cheese, right? If I go 2 days without cheddar cheese, I feel the most terrible despondency. So yes, please send me cheddar cheese. Yeah.
If I go 1 day without Kentucky bourbon, I feel the most terrible despondency. Please send me bourbon.
Send bourbon and cheese drone.
A bourbon and cheese drum. Bourbon and cheese drum at your service, sir. He is Frank Wright. You can find him hiding in plain sight, as I have been saying for 6 years, at frankwright.substack.com, and also on his own site now, frankwriter, WRIGHTER.com. Okay, old friend, thank you for sharing your thoughts. You expanded upon what you told Vox Populi, and we hit a couple of other subjects. So we'll make the video publicly available to anyone that wants to watch it, or depending on whose side you're on, if you're gay. If you were made to suffer through it, then, okay, we'll have a little mercy on you. But Frank, thank you very much.
I do apologise for my rather desultory appearance because it is terribly hot here in my little daughter's bedroom, which is probably what you Americans call my studio, and you know it's difficult. I suffer, as you can see. I've gone awfully pink because I don't respond well to that flaming scoundrel in the sky. And whenever it appears in England, I always think it's an awful omen. You know, scurry into the shadows.
Is it Fatima again?
What is this? You know, like little Northerners like me, you know, scurry away in terror from that flaming orb.
So you can, while he's hiding from the flaming orb, he'll be writing, and you can read him at frankwright.substack.com. All right, Frank, thank you very much. Great to see you, buddy. Good luck with that newfound fame.
Damned to fame, I dare say.
You know what? I did want to say one more thing to you and to the audience that's watching. When I saw on Monday, I went, I saw the 46 million views or 43 million. I went, wait a minute, that looks like Frank. That can't be Hobbit Frank. And then I went looking, I'm like, that's Hobbit. And I listened to you for 8 seconds. I went, that's Frank. My view, the thing that I told the radio audience when we returned to the airwaves on Tuesday, the thing I told them was, that's 40 some odd million people that heard me and heard many of our other guests and went, yeah. So that means that our ideas make sense. They naturally appeal, which means that the suppression, when you go, how come you only have 2,500 followers on YouTube? Because they don't want me to have any more. This is, you can't say it's because my ideas are wacky and no one would listen to them or nod their head in agreement, because they nodded their head in agreement with Frank, and I nod my head in agreement with Frank.
Look, my social media has been throttled for years, right? And I was actually going to delete the app on the Twitter app because of that, because if you speak about sanity and reality and you tell people the truth, I try to find out the truth, tell the truth and shame the devil. I'm serious about that. And that comes at a tremendous cost to you personally, because obviously you just get throttled and indeed in some degrees persecuted for that. And I just thought that was extraordinary. The reason why I think it spoke to so many millions of people is because we're so unused to hearing a basic and honest explanation from the point of view of sanity from the common man and woman. And that's because the political technique by which we're ruled rules that out of order. And you never hear that. You only hear these lunatic opinions, and we've all been suppressed and marginalized. And one other reason why we're going to win is that's done is it's parked and stymied and destroyed the careers and deprived people of a voice of millions and millions and millions of highly capable, intelligent, decent human beings who want a restoration of sanity and order. They've created a counter elite that they now can't stop. We're coming for them, and we are going to clear them out. And we will restore Britain.
It's like Yoda at the end in the scene in The Empire Strikes Back. We will. Very un-Hobbit-like. Okay, buddy, thank you very much. God bless you. Merry keep you. Great to see you.
God bless you, my friend, and cheerio. Thank you for having me on, mate.
Cheerio to you, too. The one and only Frank Wright, of course, as we have been saying all day, and as Frank and I were just chatting about and talking about, it's a very fascinating and encouraging development, that which has occurred. And I hope we're going to hear more of it. So if you want to hear more, show starts tomorrow morning at 6 a.m. right here at MikeChurch.com. You can find me on the YouBoob. You can find me on X.com at TheKingDude. And hope to see all of you soon. Remember that, as we say every day, you can shop in our store at shop.MikeChurch.com. You can support the Crusade Radio Guild. Yes, an actual media entity that's a guild at crusadechannel.com/donate. And, of course, tomorrow is Free Phone Friday here on the show. We'll also do our movie reviews in the second hours of the program, and you are free to call and hang out and pretty much talk about anything that we have talked about this week. So I want to thank Frank for being the guest, and all of you for listening and watching. If you want to strike a blow for what Frank was talking about, be a part of the counter-revolution, share this interview. If every one of you shares it, that hears about it, with just one person, well, then you have doubled the reach of it. If every one of them or every other one of them shares it with just one person, you've doubled it originally again. Follow that formula. So I hope that you will. And today is the feast of St. Augustine of Canterbury. I should have mentioned that to Frank. What a glorious day it will be when St. Augustine of Canterbury and his feast is once again celebrated, as the Archbishop of Canterbury is a dude and is a Catholic. Imagine that. That's going to do it for us. Have a safe and blessed remainder of the day. God bless you all, and Mary keep you.
He's got the truth on his side. The liberals can run, but they'll never hide. He's a friend of Mr. Madison as he fights all leftisms. He supports our troops over there, stands up to the kooks from care. He's the king, dude, of the nation of doom. Red, white, and blue.